The constitution and the political life in ancient Egypt, and we have with us our distinguished guest Bessam الشماع, the Egyptologist and the tour guide. Hello Bessam, and thank you for joining us.
Hello to you, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Bessam, how was the political life in ancient Egypt, and how similar or different is it from our today's life?
Ancient Egyptians were the first people to make a government, to form a whole form and formation of political life, political regime, also political and bureaucratic kind of style, dealing with employees, dealing with ministers. Every minister is going to be appointed. It's going to be appointed by the king, and he will report to the king. And also, all those guys are going to report, just like now, are going to report to each other's bosses. So you are going to report to your boss, the boss will report to your boss, until the big report will reach the king.
So there was a clear hierarchy.
All the time. For ancient Egyptians were the first people to start trying things about justice. And that was the key of the political life in ancient Egypt. And it was supposed to be the anchor of the whole political life all through. You have to be a just person. Every now and then, when you read a political decree or a political this, political that, or a decision, or a minister taking a job, there will be a letter sent by the king to the minister telling him what to do. So those letters reached us, and they were interpreted and translated and transliterated. And we knew from these letters amazing facts about political life. First of all, there will be a great deal of concern from the king concerning his minister to perform justice with the people. He will tell him, deal with him who you know and deal with him who you do not know better than the first one. So those people that you don't know, you have to deal with them better than the people that you know. Meaning there will be no powerful thing about your relative, your friend, you're this, you're that. Secondly, there was a huge concern about what they called in hieroglyphics neket. Neket is a very important word, and this I would like to dedicate to some people in 2013. Neket is an ancient Egyptian word which I think is pretty amazing, because literally...
What does it mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Literally, it means something. Beware. Because the word something can also be played with. Just like, unfortunately, just like today. Give him something. Deliver to him
Could
something.
this lead to a sort of corruption?
Yes. Yes. Not sort of, it's corruption. It's the heart of corruption. It's bribery. So, neket means a bribe. Do not take neket, he tells his minister. His minister will reply and say, we've got an amazing minister. His name is Rekhmira. I love this guy. And this is to all our students. Whoever wants to make a doctorate, or to make some, I don't know, high studies or something, go and make doctorate on Rekhmira. He's got a tomb called tomb number 100 in the West Bank, in the Valley of the Nobles. Amazing tomb. And Rekhmira is received, like any other minister, that letter from the king was telling him to do this, to do that, and also to work with Ma'at. Ma'at is the female, is the lady with the feather on her head, who is the responsible girl for all this justice and order. So justice and order were all the same. If you perform justice, you'll perform order in the society, and vice versa. If you need order, you have to be just with everybody. But if you are going to treat this person better than that person, there will be no order in the country. Here is another message to 2013.
Did we witness a kind of social justice during the time of the pharaohs?
That's very true. And just like any society, there will be the bad and the good. And we all remember that person who was saying, that employee in the government who was saying, I will never kind of deform. He used the word deform. I'm not going to deform my job by taking neket, by taking bribery. So he's putting that law before he takes the chair who he's going to lead that place from. Also, for kings, they would talk to their sons, because there was hereditary system. So the son is going to take the power after his father's death. And sometimes, during the last years of his father, he will be also a co-regent, a type of a co-regent in the rule. So he'll be in the throne right beside him to prepare him, just like Ramses II, for example. He was prepared to be the king. So when I tell you he ruled for 66 years and 10 months, that's a pretty long time for a rule. Pepi II took the power 6, he died 100. So he ruled 94 years.
Oh my God.
People got
so
fed
long.
up. So they started the revolution. So here is another message. do not rule long.
For long.
Because people get fed up.
People do not learn from the past.
Exactly,
unfortunately.
exactly. And how many times I said for the last 15, 20 years, read your history so that you do not repeat your past. And we all remember Santayana. This sentence is like ringing in my ears for years now. Every day, probably, I would remember it. Santayana said, to those who do not read their past will be condemned by repeating it. Repeating your past is a condemnation, is something that you are going to be condemned by.
It means that you don't learn from your own mistakes.
Exactly. Also dealing with the Constitution, I would like to mention the name of a man who we all love, and we all pronounce his name wrong. His name is Hor Muhib. Okay? His true name is Her M. Heb.
So
Okay.
people have the right to pronounce it wrong.
I don't know.
So
No,
complicated.
I mean, if we say Her is like Horus, so Her is the ancient Egyptian word for the falcon. And M is in hieroglyphs, and Heb is feast. I like that. Don't you like it? The word Heb means feast. Something nice, because Heb is another word that you can relate to in Arabic language. Heb, love. So Her Em Heb means the falcon is in rejoice. The falcon is in a feast. I think it's a beautiful name. And your son or your brother would be called the falcon is happy. I think that's a pretty beautiful name. This king is amazing because he wrote a constitution. He wrote a law for the
Was
government.
it the first constitution in Egypt?
You can say by the idea of a constitution, yes. But by the law and order, no. Before him, there were loads and loads of kings and ministers who put laws, who placed laws for the country. But as the word constitution that you would refer to today, yes, you can say almost that Hor Heb was the first. Hor Heb is an amazing man because one, he is not coming from a royal blood. So that's important because that means he was not royal, but he became the king. And that is something to remember. He mentioned in his text there was a slab of stone, 5 meters high, found near his pylon in the Karnak temples. And I would like to say Karnak temples.
There are many.
Because they are many, exactly. So beside his pylon, they found a slab of stone with a text. He carved on this text the most amazing thing. He says, before I decide the law, before I write the constitution as we call it today, I went around the streets. I went to the south. He checked the streets. The king went down and walked in the streets of Egypt so that he can understand hence problems. So he can understand Basam's ideas about this thing and that thing. To see what the people are suffering from. And he concentrated on 3 jobs in the country, and he became very strong dealing with them. One, the judges. Because remember, in ancient Egypt, ministers can be judges, and judges can be ministers. Both of them, more or less, can be doing the same job. So he goes, you judges, you deal with people with fairness. Because if you meet with somebody doing something else than justice, meaning corrupt, you shall be executed to death. So, in one of the terms, or one of the articles, if you like, in the constitution of Hor Heb, is that if the judge did something outside, you will be condemned to execution.
So justice came number 1, the very first priority in the
With
Constitution.
no doubt whatsoever, my dear. With no doubt. Yes, I can see that there can be a kind of harshness in the dealing with the situation, but sometimes you need to use your iron fist. I mean, that is something that we all can agree with. Secondly, the employees. And in ancient Egypt, employees as a whole were very, very high in the caliber and in the pyramid of work. The father would tell his son as an advice, today, you will tell your son, oh, be a doctor, or be a physician, or be an officer, be a pilot, be an engineer. Okay, these are the things that are going on in our society for a long time. No, ancient Egyptians, no. The father would sit and the mother would sit with her son and go, be an employee. The dream of any Egyptian family is for their son to be an employee
Yes, until
of the
very recently, I remember movies in the 1930s and 20s and 30s.
And after that, even
The ultimate aim was for the son or daughter to, the son basically to work in the government.
Would you like me to surprise you?
Please do.
2013.
I don't think it's still the aim
I'll
of
tell you.
families.
People who were working in the freelance jobs are dreaming
Of joining the
being
government.
an employees now.
But why
Because-
this mentality, Mr.
Well,
Bassam?
because
Inherited
you are
from the ancient.
I think one. Two is freelance jobs are suffering for the last 3 years. Let's take tourism. 60% are fired, as it was said by the Constitution Party. 60% were fired. So if he was, at the end of the month, would take his, I don't know, 900 or 1,200 now in January, inshallah, so he will be happy. 3 years. They are taking all their students
He
now.
has stable
all their sons-
income.
Exactly.
An income.
Because now they are taking their sons from private schools, putting them in government school. There are lots and lots of things happening now. So this business, and that's a saying, isn't it? We have a saying in this country about if you have been left by the government employees, go and get yourself with its dust.
Yeah.
That is one of the sayings, that if the employees of the government will have dust on their outfits, we'll let it be dust on our outfits. I don't care. Also, be a scribe. Here is another very important job in ancient Egypt. Be a scribe, my son. Why? Because words of the scribe
mean
will
a writer?
Writer.
Yeah.
An author.
Yeah.
An author in Egyptology. Right? And he goes to his son, he goes, be a scribe, my son. So the son will go, why? Why would you like me to be a scribe? Because, he says, because the scribes, their words live forever. Your words will live for eternity, for infinity, never ending. Also, the palm of your hand will be soft.
You're not
While
doing harsh work?
Exactly.
Yeah.
While if you were working with the pottery, the palm of your hand will be so dry like the back of a crocodile. That is exactly how the ancient Egyptian explained.
They have been
it.
very descriptive.
Very descriptive. You can imagine the hands and the dryness of the hands and the harshness of the job. Also, the ancient Egyptians dealt with employees in a different way according to the law. There was a law in ancient Egypt that says that the author exempted from taxation.
So they were giving the author a very
high
high position.
Exactly. And I remember I was giving a lecture to the Minister of Finance, and the taxation manager of Egypt was sitting on the first row. So I'm going to him and I'm going, authors did not pay taxation in ancient Egypt.
And media people as well.
I'm an author, you know. And he goes, he's not replying. But
You were not exempted.
I was never exempt. But it is something to give you an idea how they were so appreciated, so venerated, if you like. And the other interesting law in ancient Egypt is dealing with women. In the laws of ancient Egypt, women had great deals of rights. One of the rights of women is that she got the right to ask if she does not like her husband. So she goes, I don't like it. And there will be ideas, there will be judges, there will be decisions given if she wants the divorce. And in case
So
of the
divorce did exist
yes.
during the time of the pharaohs.
Oh, yes. Oh, 100% yes. Divorce and your rights. And the woman's rights in the apartment and in the furniture and everything. And it is written in the paper that is when you are actually the marriage contract. You would be given 2 pieces of silver.
So when we got back our rights several years ago, we were taking
like
back rights which
centuries
we
ago.
did have thousands of years ago.
You would be given a dowry, according to one of the marriage contracts, 2 pieces of silver. And silver was more expensive than gold. In ancient Egypt, in parts of our history, silver was rarer. So it was rarer than gold. Gold was in the south, in Nubia, brilliant. But so you would be given 2 pieces of silver. If I decided for you to go, in the contract it says, which means divorce, I shall add 3 more pieces of silver. So that is your only after the divorce. You would be given 3 pieces of silver. That's more than the dowry. Also, she will be given a % of what he gained during his work, during his marriage with you.
We did not reach this level.
Not yet.
Am I giving ideas here?
So we would like to live in the time of the pharaohs.
Oh, yes.
I want to ask you something. Who participated in the drafting of the Constitution? Who wrote the Constitution?
That's a good question. We believe from the text it was more or less the king.
On his own.
It was more or less the king. But we have to say that the king in ancient Egypt was not only the king. It was loads of counselors around him, loads of chancellors. I mean, this title is like depicted on the walls a million times, the chancellor of the king. So yes, and probably also the judges. And let me tell you something, also judges would be given a job in separate places. For example, the village of the workers. So the village of the workers in the West Bank is a small city, but it's closed. Only the workers live there with their families. They will have a special judge, will be the judge of this city. So he's not going to work as a judge somewhere else. Also, law of punishments. In ancient Egypt, there will be laws of punishment. And some of those laws, I don't know. For example, one of the things that I think is a little bit unfair is that if the thief or the robber died during when, for example, they were discussing things with him and investigating and everything, his son will pay the punishment of his father. So I don't know about this one. So all the laws, yes, justice, everything. Some of those laws I think is a little bit harsh as well.
Mr. Bessam, we need much more time to talk about political life in ancient Egypt, but unfortunately our time is running up. I thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure having you with us here on For the Breakfast Show.
Thank you, Mr. Bessam.
Thank you.
And that, our dear viewers, brings us to the end of this edition of The Breakfast Show. Hope you have enjoyed it and have a very good morning. Thank you, Hind.
Thank you, Miss. And don't forget to join us tomorrow at the same time for the next edition of Breakfast Show.